Okay, mental computation. What is that? That is doing calculation without using any help of any equipment. So only using your own head. So you're not allowed to use a pen and paper except for writing down the answer. There are many different strategies to use to do mental computation. But we will focus mostly on those that come naturally after a while, after you have learned more and more mathematics. Of course, some of them are a little bit small techniques, but the main focus is something that feels natural, not something you have to memorize strange rules for mental computation. So let's take first some examples of addition. And all these examples, this will not be an exhaustive list, since there are many. But let's say that we take 63 plus 38. So how can we do this mental computation? Then we need to remember now that when we're writing, we're only writing down what goes on in our head. So what we're only allowed to write down the answer, really. So one method or strategy is to add the 10th separately and the ones separately. So this you do in your head. So 60 plus 30 is 90, and 3 plus 8, that's 11, and then that's 101. So this you have to do in your head. Or for example, another technique to do this, you could for example keep the first number intact, then add the 10th of the second number to that, and then after that you add the ones. So this becomes 93. So you keep in your memory 93, and then you add 8 mentally, and that's also 101. So these are quite common strategies to do addition. Similar, you can do, for example, do subtraction. So let's say, for example, I want to do 87 minus 63. Then I can also do the tenths separately and the ones separately. So this is 20 plus 4, so this is 24. Or I can do the second tactics or strategy. So that's 87, keeping the first intact, subtracting the tenths of the second number, and then subtracting the ones of the second numbers. So this is 27 minus 3, 24. Okay, so these are quite straightforward, but they're commonly used. Then a little bit more interesting perhaps is if you go to multiplication. And the common strategy to do multiplication is, for example, if you do 4 times 13, then the common strategy is to divide up this number into tens and ones. So you think of it as 10 plus 3. Then they use the rule of distributive of multiplying two numbers. So you multiply the first and you multiply the second. So this is 40 plus 12, 52. So this is a very common way of doing it. Of course, you could just as well, if you like, if you have, for example, 18, then it could perhaps be easier to round up. So you take minus 2 instead here. So you have 4 times 20, that's 80, minus 4 times 2, that's 8. So this is also possible, of course. We will mostly limit ourselves here now to integers, because we have seen for decimals, often they can be done mentally as integer multiplication. For example, if I would like to do 6 times 1.3, then mentally I can do 6 times 13, and then I just in the end mentally move the decimal step one step. So 6 times 13 I can do as in the last page, I can do as 6 times 10. and 6 times 3. So this is 60 plus 18. So 78. And then you just need to remember that to move the decimal sign one step in the end. So this is 7.8. So we will mainly focus now on integers. So first of all, you should learn how to do mental computation with integers. Then it's not so difficult also to train on doing decimals. For another strategy, for example, if you have 25 times, if you take, for example, 44, how can you multiply these two? You could, of course, do 20 plus 5 and multiply like that, but in this case it's probably most easy to see that 25, if you multiply that by 4, it becomes 100. And at the same time, then dividing by 4, because if you multiply this by 4, you have to divide this by 4 to keep it the same number. So this is 100, and this becomes 11. So this is just 1,100. So that's also an example of what you can do. And also, for example, doing percent. 20% of, what should we take, 120. Then it's easy to go via 10%. So first you can do 10%. And that's just taking a tenth, that's 12. And then you need to take the double, since 20% is twice as much as 10%, so you end up with 24. So that's easy to do with mental computation. Also for division, there are several rules, strategies you can use. For example, if you want to do 78 divided by 6, you could write this as 60 plus 18. Or you do it mentally. Of course, now you can do this using a division rule. Divide both numbers by 6. So this is 10, and this is 3, it's 13. And instead you could of course also take 78 divided by 6. Instead of dividing it up, if you don't see that, for example, you could first simplify the fraction. So if you divide by 2 up and down, so then you have 39 here and 3 there. And 39 divided by 3, that's 13. So it's also possible as a fraction to simplify. Another example, for example, on this similar fashion, you can do 248 divided by 8. And if you repeatedly simplify by dividing by 2, since you have a lot of 2's in the denominator. So first you divide up and down by 2. Then again. And then again. So you get 31. And you can also work with decimal numbers, but there's nothing really new. So for example, if you want to divide 30 by 1.5, then you can mentally think that you should do this instead. You multiply up and down by 10. And now we know that 15 times 10 is 150. So this, to get 300, you must have twice as much. So this must be 20. So because 10 times this is 150, and 2 times that is 300. Okay, so these are some examples of mental computation.